Lewis Hamilton disqualified by the FIA from the Spanish Grand Prix due to a failed anti-doping test. Stay until the end to get all the details. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. The entire Formula One world was plunged into turmoil late Monday evening when the FIA released a statement that would ripple through every garage, office, and fan community across the globe. Lewis Hamilton, the legendary seven-time world champion, a man who had transcended the realm of motorsport to become a global icon of resilience, talent, and activism, has been officially disqualified from competing in the upcoming Spanish Grand Prix at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. The announcement dropped like a bombshell, detonating a frenzy of speculation, disbelief, and outrage within minutes of its release. Despite the absence of any explicitly banned substances in his system, Hamilton's disqualification stems from a series of abnormalities discovered during a post-race anti-doping test conducted in the days following the Monaco Grand Prix, an event that had already been laden with drama, strategic blunders, and fierce competition. What truly inflamed the situation was not the presence of any illegal chemical agent or artificial enhancer, but rather a peculiar deviation in Hamilton's biological passport, a dossier maintained under stringent WADA regulations that tracks an athlete's physiological data over time. Sources close to the FIA's Internal Medical Commission revealed that Hamilton's recent blood profile presented anomalies that were biologically inconsistent with the trends previously established for the British driver throughout the season. These included an unusually elevated red blood cell count, heightened hemoglobin levels, and increased oxygen carrying capacity, all of which may contribute to enhanced aerobic endurance and recovery. While such data might normally be brushed aside as the result of altitude training or a rigorous change in nutrition and conditioning, FIA experts insisted that the changes observed were too abrupt and pronounced to fit within normal adaptive ranges. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. Despite the test results not yielding evidence of any conventional banned substance, the governing body opted to err on the side of caution, invoking a provisional suspension clause designed to uphold the integrity of the sport. This preemptive measure, though controversial, has been justified on the grounds of maintaining a level playing field while the investigation is underway. According to insiders, the matter has already been referred to the FIA's Internal Ethics Committee, a rarely invoked panel composed of medical experts, legal advisors, and independent observers, who unanimously agreed that Hamilton should be temporarily withdrawn from competition until a comprehensive and transparent review can be concluded. This decision, while framed as procedural, has been interpreted by many as a deeply damaging blow to Hamilton's career, reputation, and potentially his legacy. The FIA's official press release, issued at dawn on Tuesday morning, was clinical yet ominous in its language. In the course of ongoing routine doping control protocols mandated by the FIA in collaboration with WADA, biological markers were identified in Mr. Lewis Hamilton's profile that significantly deviate from established benchmarks. Though no prohibited substances have been detected at this stage, the deviation in hematological parameters warrants further analysis. As per FIA and WADA procedural mandates, Mr. Hamilton will not be permitted to compete in the Spanish Grand Prix until a conclusive scientific determination has been made. Within the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team, the atmosphere was described as grim, tense, and confused. Team personnel, many of whom have worked alongside Hamilton for more than a decade, were said to be in disbelief, their confidence shaken not by a fear of guilt, but by the sheer improbability that such a controversy could engulf a figure so synonymous with professionalism and discipline. Team principal Toto Wolff, long regarded as Hamilton's staunchest ally and confidant within the paddock, was seen arriving at the circuit's team hospitality unit in a flurry of urgent phone calls and security escorts. His face, usually composed and authoritative, betrayed frustration and disbelief. Behind closed doors, Wolff reportedly addressed a select group of reporters and team partners, speaking with unfiltered passion. "I've seen Lewis prepare for races under conditions that would break most people. I've seen him spend hours in the gym, studying data, pushing himself beyond what's expected even for someone at the top of their game. If there's one thing I'd bet my life on, it's that Lewis Hamilton does not cheat. There must be a flaw in the process, a misinterpretation of the data. We will not accept this without a fight. Mercedes will spare no resource, legal, medical, scientific, to get to the bottom of this." Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. The paddock, meanwhile, has erupted into a chaotic maelstrom of opinion, rumor, and unofficial commentary. Rival team principals have largely refrained from commenting publicly, but off-the-record whispers suggest a growing concern that the FIA's handling of the situation could set a dangerous precedent. Some insiders fear that the implications of this case, especially in the absence of a definitive banned substance, could blur the line between science and suspicion, potentially opening the floodgates to witch hunts against athletes whose physiological uniqueness might simply defy easy categorization. Other drivers have expressed quiet support for Hamilton, though few have issued public statements. A cryptic social media post from Fernando Alonso simply read, "Truth always comes to light. Stay strong, champion." Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc posted an Instagram story of a black racing helmet with the caption, "Respect is earned. Always." The broader fanbase is deeply divided. Hamilton loyalists have flooded the FIA's social media channels with accusations of bias, sabotage, and hypocrisy, while skeptics have called for greater transparency and stricter testing protocols. Conspiracy theories, as always in F1, are running rampant, some suggesting targeted sabotage, others hinting at politically motivated retaliation for Hamilton's outspoken views on equality, environmentalism, and governance. Adding to the intrigue is the silence from Hamilton himself. Normally vocal and active on his platforms, the British driver has not posted any response, statement, or message to fans. His silence is deafening, and has only fueled speculation that he is either devastated by the accusation or preparing a legal and scientific counteroffensive that could challenge not only the current decision but also reshape how biological anomalies are handled in elite motorsport going forward. Behind the scenes, Mercedes is said to be consulting with independent medical experts, legal advisors specializing in sports arbitration, and even WADA-affiliated scientists in an effort to reconstruct the testing chain and find any procedural or analytical errors. Some believe the team may attempt to push for a court-supervised reanalysis of the sample or even present counterdata demonstrating that Hamilton's physiology, while rare, is naturally occurring and not the result of enhancement. According to one high-ranking Mercedes insider, if there's even a 1% chance this is a misunderstanding, we will not let this stand. Lewis's name means everything, not just to us, but to the sport. You don't erase a legacy with a questionable lab result. As the Spanish Grand Prix looms just days away, the drama surrounding Hamilton's suspension has overshadowed all other storylines. The focus has shifted from tire compounds and aerodynamic upgrades to ethics committees and hematological variances. Whatever the eventual outcome, this scandal is shaping up to be a defining moment not just for Lewis Hamilton, but for the entire sport of Formula One. In a world where every fraction of a second is the result of years of training, precision engineering, and absolute trust in systems of fairness, the sudden removal of a titan like Hamilton from the grid without concrete proof of wrongdoing feels like the tectonic plates of F1 morality shifting beneath everyone's feet. And until answers emerge, clear, verified scientific answers, the world will watch, speculate, and wonder whether this is the fall of a hero or the beginning of a fight to protect not just a career, but the very essence of justice in sport. In a tense and emotionally charged moment that sent shockwaves through the Formula One paddock, Toto Wolff, visibly shaken but composed, stood firm in front of the Sky Sports microphones, his voice unwavering yet clearly filled with restrained frustration. "I don't believe for a second that Lewis did anything wrong," he asserted firmly, his tone clipped and resolute. "This decision lacks precedent, and the data interpretation seems puzzling." There was a long pause, as if he needed to hold back more than he was willing to say on air. "He'll be back, stronger than ever." His eyes, usually analytical and sharp, briefly betrayed a flicker of disbelief. Perhaps not in Lewis, but in the sports mechanisms that had brought them to this point. Just meters away, in the heavily guarded FIA drivers' briefing held behind closed doors but not entirely hidden from the ever-curious cameras and microphones, the atmosphere had grown increasingly tense. The drivers, many still in their race suits, gathered as usual after free practice. What was supposed to be a routine debrief quickly transformed into an extraordinary gathering when the steward's notification regarding Hamilton's irregular test result began to circulate discreetly, but inevitably across their shared digital briefing tablets. As the document's header, bearing Hamilton's name in bold, flashed on their screens, confusion turned to alarm. Charles Leclerc, who had shared countless battles, conversations, and even quiet moments of camaraderie with Hamilton during their time at Ferrari, was among the first to react. Caught off guard mid-discussion about Turn 3 braking zones, his screen vibrated with a notification. A small camera embedded discreetly in the room captured the exact moment his eyes scanned the alert. His expression morphed from confusion to utter disbelief. "What? That's not possible," he muttered, barely audible, his Monégasque accent tinged with genuine concern. "I just had lunch with him. He looked normal, relaxed. I know Lewis. He doesn't need shortcuts. This makes no sense. Those few seconds, his furrowed brows, the way he instinctively leaned back in his chair and shook his head slowly, spoke volumes more than any official comment could have. Hours later, after the storm had only just begun to take shape, Leclerc emerged from the paddock media pen, surrounded by a half-circle of journalists pressing recorders and phones forward. His voice was calm, yet you could detect the underlying emotion in his choice of words. "I really hope this clears up," he said. "We all compete hard, but none of us want to win because someone else was unfairly removed. Lewis is a legend. If he says he's clean, I believe him." There was a sincerity in his eyes, a rare transparency in a sport so often clouded by strategy and diplomacy. However, it was Lewis Hamilton himself who would bring gravity to the situation in a way only he could. Hours after the news had spread across every paddock corridor, press room, and social media feed, the seven-time world champion stood outside his hotel in Barcelona, encircled by a forest of microphones and flashing cameras. The usually poised and cool-headed Hamilton had clearly spent the afternoon preparing for this moment, yet when he stepped forward, you could see the weight he carried. His jaw was tight, his eyes reddened but defiant. "I am deeply disappointed by today's announcement," he began, his voice steady but emotionally charged. "Let me be absolutely clear, I have never, and would never use any substance or method that violates the integrity of the sport or my own values." The sentence hung in the air, surrounded by an eerie silence from the press corps that seemed too stunned to interrupt. "I have always competed clean," he continued, his hands clenched at his sides. "And I have always undergone these tests without concern. This result is a mistake. The data may show something irregular, but it's not because of doping. I don't know if it was a lab error, a testing protocol deviation, or something else entirely, but I will get to the bottom of it." He stopped for a second, looking directly into one of the main broadcast cameras as if speaking not only to the press, but to every fan watching around the world. "I will take legal action," he declared with fierce determination. "I refuse to let this stain my name and my career. My team and my fans deserve the truth, and I will fight to make sure that's what comes out." His voice cracked slightly near the end, not from weakness, but from the emotional toll that the unfolding crisis was beginning to exert. Journalists reported that Hamilton's press statement lasted under 3 minutes, but its impact was immediate and immense. As he stepped back, choosing not to answer any questions and escorted by security into the hotel lobby, a wave of statements, analyses, and opinion pieces erupted online, from former drivers to medical experts questioning testing accuracy, to FIA insiders speculating about what went wrong in the chain of custody. The story had officially spiraled beyond sport and into public controversy. Meanwhile, back in the Mercedes garage, engineers and team lawyers had already mobilized. Sources close to the team revealed that the backup B sample had already been transported under tight security to a third-party lab for expedited reanalysis, with results expected within 48 hours. Mercedes' legal team, said to be working in tandem with 2 major sports law firms, was compiling a detailed dossier of all previous negative tests conducted on Hamilton throughout the season, more than 24 in total, to provide context and establish a pattern of clean results. Additional reports indicated that the team had submitted an emergency request to the FIA's Medical Commission for a full protocol audit, citing possible cross-contamination or procedural inconsistencies. "This is not just about a result," a source inside the FIA mentioned anonymously. "This is about the credibility of the entire anti-doping system within Formula One. If a mistake has been made, it will cost dearly, reputationally, procedurally, and legally." In parallel, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, confirmed that a formal appeal had been filed by Hamilton's legal representatives, invoking an urgent review process. According to CAS regulations, in cases where the appeal involves potential reputational harm before an active competition, provisional measures can be requested to delay any sanctions pending full investigation. As night fell over the circuit to Barcelona-Catalunya, the mood in the paddock remained tense. Drivers who had once sparred with Hamilton on track now found themselves wrestling with a different kind of battle, one that transcended lap times and tire strategies. Many, like Lando Norris and George Russell, offered quiet support, sending messages or issuing brief statements reaffirming their respect for Hamilton as a competitor and as a person. Fans, too, were quick to take sides. Social media exploded into a frenzy of hashtags, threads, and theories, with trending phrases like #JusticeForLewis, #DopingGate, and #FAExplained surfacing across platforms. Some conspiracy theories began to take root, ranging from sabotage orchestrated by rival teams to more outlandish suggestions of politically motivated framing. What remains undisputed, however, is the resilience with which Hamilton responded. In the hours that followed, he issued a short video on Instagram, calmly seated in his hotel room, speaking directly to his 40 million followers. "I know you're all shocked," he said. "So am I. But I believe in truth. I believe in fairness. And I believe in fighting for both." That video alone was viewed more than 80 million times in under 12 hours. As the sun prepared to rise over the paddock once more, the world waited, not just for lap times, pole positions, or sector speeds, but for clarity, for truth, and for justice in a sport that had just witnessed one of its most dramatic and unsettling twists in recent memory. The broader Formula One community, encompassing not just the teams and drivers but also fans, pundits, former champions, and even corporate sponsors, has been plunged into a state of unprecedented emotional turbulence. Reactions range from cautious pragmatism to passionate, almost militant support, especially from the most loyal sectors of the fan base. Social media has become a battleground of opinion, debate, speculation, and in many cases, outright outrage. Hashtags like #JusticeForLewis, #FAExplanationNow, and #WeStandWith44 have erupted across platforms such as X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit, spreading like wildfire and dominating global trends for more than 36 hours straight. Thousands of content creators have published emotional video statements, reaction breakdowns, and timeline analyses, many pointing to inconsistencies and a perceived lack of transparency in how this situation has been handled by the authorities. Memes, protest artwork, and videos from fans crying or holding up homemade signs have flooded the digital space, turning what began as a procedural issue into a full-blown cultural and political movement within the F1 ecosystem. Prominent voices in the sport, including former world champions such as Sebastian Vettel, Fernando Alonso, Jenson Button, and even Nico Rosberg, despite his often icy relationship with Hamilton, have come forward with public statements. Many of them, while measured in tone, have urged the FIA and all relevant bodies to exercise extreme caution, impartiality, and above all, patience. They emphasize the gravity of the situation not just for Lewis Hamilton as an individual, but for the credibility of the sport as a whole. Vettel, who has long championed fairness and environmental integrity within the sport, noted that no accusation, no result, no finding, no matter how scientific, should override the fundamental principles of justice, due process, and transparency. Alonso echoed a similar sentiment in an interview with Spanish media. "If we lose our faith in fair competition, then Formula One loses its soul." It's not about Hamilton, it's about every single driver who has ever stepped into a cockpit with the belief that they're being judged on their talent, not caught in political crossfire. But while the visible public-facing reaction has largely leaned toward support and solidarity, behind closed doors, an entirely different dynamic appears to be unfolding. In the paddock corridors and FIA technical briefings, confidential conversations have begun to swirl about the integrity of the biological monitoring and doping control systems themselves. Sources close to several teams have quietly expressed their unease, not at Hamilton, but at what they perceive to be outdated or insufficiently rigorous testing methodologies. Some engineers and team doctors have reportedly raised concerns that the bio-passport system, which is designed to track long-term physiological markers in drivers over time, may be too sensitive to contextual fluctuations that are not fully understood or accounted for in its algorithms. In particular, a renewed scrutiny is now being directed at the broader assumptions embedded in the system's data interpretation models. These models rely heavily on patterns over time, blood cell ratios, hemoglobin levels, hormonal balances, and other markers that are presumed to remain within certain individualized thresholds. However, the reality of an elite racing driver's life introduces a chaotic cocktail of influencing factors that are nearly impossible to model: grueling intercontinental travel schedules, rapid shifts in altitude, intense simulator training, sleep disruption due to media commitments, dehydration during long stints in high-temperature cockpits, and even the psychological stress of performance expectations. These are all elements that can have drastic and unpredictable effects on a driver's biochemistry without any external manipulation involved. A medical officer working within the FIA, who spoke under the condition of anonymity due to the sensitivity of the situation, shed light on the internal discussions. According to this official, the issue wasn't a straightforward positive result or banned substance detection. Instead, the controversy seems to revolve around anomalies detected within Hamilton's biological passport, a deviation from his established baseline that the algorithm flagged as statistically abnormal. "The problem isn't a positive test," the officer said. "It's that the biological passport doesn't match historical norms. But human bodies are not machines. Altitude training, hydration, stress, sleep, even air travel, these all affect blood values. The assumption of tampering is dangerous without proof." The implication here is staggering. The system may be treating the natural adaptability and variability of the human body as a potential red flag, especially in high-performance athletes whose routines and physiological stressors are anything but typical. Further complicating matters is the shadow of past controversies. Several years ago, the FIA came under fire for delays in processing test results during a similar situation involving a mid-tier driver, though that incident never reached the public spotlight to the same extent. Internal memos leaked at the time indicated a lack of standardization in sample handling between different race venues, especially in circuits outside of Europe where laboratory partnerships varied in terms of equipment and expertise. These historical inconsistencies are now being re-examined through a much harsher lens, especially given the profile of the current case and the weight it carries for one of the sport's most decorated and high-profile figures. Additionally, a whisper campaign appears to be brewing among certain factions within the sport's political machinery, whispers that suggest this could be part of a broader strategic maneuver, either to marginalize Hamilton during the twilight years of his career or to distract from larger institutional failings within the FIA. While these theories remain speculative, they are being discussed with increasing seriousness across WhatsApp groups of team principals, ex-drivers, and even sponsors. Some insiders believe the situation could evolve into a watershed moment for Formula One, one where the balance of power between athletes and institutions, between transparency and control, between data and judgment, is fundamentally re-evaluated. One former team principal, also speaking anonymously, noted that there has always been tension between the sporting side of F1 and the regulatory side. But when you introduce biological surveillance into the mix, without the right interpretive framework, you're asking for trouble. These are not chess players. These are the most physically and mentally taxed athletes on the planet. If your models don't reflect that reality, then your findings are at best incomplete, and at worst, dangerously misleading. As the storm continues to build, Lewis Hamilton has remained largely silent, posting only a single Instagram story showing a serene view from what appears to be his hotel window, accompanied by a short quote, "Truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose. It will defend itself." It's a calm yet defiant gesture, interpreted by many of his fans as a signal that he will not back down, will not plead, and most importantly, will not be defined by what some see as a deeply flawed process. Meanwhile, the FIA has promised an internal review of the testing algorithms, citing a commitment to both scientific rigor and procedural fairness. However, critics argue that the institution is simply reacting to mounting public pressure rather than proactively safeguarding athletes from potential system errors. Whether this review results in meaningful reform, or simply buys the organization time until the storm passes, remains to be seen. What is clear is that the situation has reached beyond the technical confines of sports governance and entered the cultural consciousness of a global audience. It is no longer just a question of test results or deviations in blood data. It has become a referendum on trust, fairness, and the fragility of institutional credibility in a sport where margins are measured in milliseconds and careers can be altered by whispers. For now, the only certainty emerging from the chaos is that Lewis Hamilton will not be taking part in the Spanish Grand Prix. That much has been confirmed by Ferrari in a brief, emotionally charged statement that left more questions than answers. The team announced that it would not seek to replace Hamilton with a reserve driver, not Robert Schwartzman, not Antonio Giovinazzi, not even the experienced Davide Rigon, out of what it described as deep respect for the complexity and sensitivity of the current situation. That decision means Carlos Sainz will be the lone Scuderia Ferrari entry at his home race, an unusual sight in the era of mandatory two-car teams, and an image that is already sending shockwaves across the motorsport world. Meanwhile, the paddock atmosphere is charged with unease. Mechanics, journalists, and even rival team personnel speak in hushed tones, glancing frequently toward the Ferrari motorhome, which has been heavily guarded since the early hours of Friday morning. No clear details have emerged regarding the full scope of the situation, but unofficial whispers have circulated wildly, ranging from a health scare involving Hamilton to a classified disagreement between the British driver and senior Ferrari management. What makes the mystery more intense is Hamilton's own cryptic social media post just before the announcement, a single photo of the Spanish sunset over Montjuic with the caption, "Some things are bigger than racing. Truth always wins." That was enough to fuel speculation of everything from political protest to a possible fallout with the FIA itself. Outside the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, the energy is electric, but not for the usual reasons. Fans, many draped in red Ferrari gear or the familiar black and purple of Hamilton's Mercedes days, have begun assembling en masse. Handwritten signs bearing messages of support like "Justice for Lewis," "We stand with number 44," and "Where is the truth?" flutter in the Catalonian breeze. The grandstands are filling early, despite the knowledge that the 7-time world champion will not be racing. Young children are seen tearfully clutching Hamilton merchandise, while older fans debate furiously in the aisles, trying to piece together theories that no official channel has yet confirmed. At the heart of the media frenzy lies one of the most enigmatic drivers in the history of the sport. Hamilton, known for his resilience, intellect, and deep sense of justice, has always defied convention. Whether fighting racism, advocating for human rights, or demanding transparency from governing bodies, he has often stood at the intersection of sport and social conscience. But this feels different. This is not a post-race penalty or a protest for change. This is an absence. A void. A silence that speaks louder than any protest or speech. Behind closed doors, the political ramifications are already beginning to reverberate. Team principals held an emergency meeting late Friday evening, reportedly at the request of Ferrari boss Frédéric Vasseur and F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali. No details from that meeting have been released, but it is believed that Hamilton's current predicament was the sole topic of discussion. Insiders suggest that several teams, including Mercedes and McLaren, voiced concerns about the precedent being set and the potential erosion of trust between the FIA, teams, and drivers. Toto Wolff, who still maintains close ties with Hamilton, was seen leaving the meeting visibly frustrated, refusing to comment when pressed by reporters. Adding further intrigue, rumors are now circulating that Hamilton's exclusion, or voluntary withdrawal, depending on whom you believe, may not be entirely of his own volition. Some insiders claim he was presented with new telemetry data late Thursday night that he flatly refused to accept. Others whisper of disagreements regarding technical discrepancies in his car setup that could not be reconciled. There is even an unconfirmed theory involving a security threat that Hamilton allegedly raised to team and FIA officials, prompting a series of confidential briefings that have so far yielded no public clarification. In the absence of transparency, every possibility, no matter how far-fetched, has taken on a veneer of plausibility. For Ferrari, the optics are complicated. This was supposed to be a defining weekend. Their new package, finally tailored to both drivers, was expected to bring them within striking distance of Red Bull and McLaren. The Italian media had been abuzz with excitement over the potential of a Ferrari 1-2 in Barcelona, and yet now, that narrative has been replaced with one of uncertainty, frustration, and disbelief. Carlos Sainz, ever the consummate professional, has remained quiet on the matter, stating only that he will give absolutely everything for the team and for the home fans. But the pressure on him is immense. With Hamilton gone, Ferrari's spotlight now burns brighter and hotter on Sainz, who must navigate a treacherous emotional and competitive landscape with the eyes of the world on him. Back in the UK, the reaction from Hamilton's inner circle has been swift and unwavering. His longtime physiotherapist Angela Cullen posted a message on Instagram that simply read, "Loyalty, courage, truth." Former McLaren teammate Jenson Button called the situation deeply concerning during a live Sky Sports segment, and Martin Brundle went so far as to call it the darkest cloud I've seen over a Grand Prix in 30 years of covering this sport. Even rivals have weighed in, with Max Verstappen stating, "I hope we get answers. This affects all of us." And yet, amid all the speculation, confusion, and growing tension, Hamilton himself has remained largely silent, deliberately so. No press conference. No interviews. Just that one cryptic post. In a sport where narratives move at the speed of light, his calculated silence has become its own form of defiance. Whether it's an act of protest, a demand for clarity, or a moment of personal reckoning, the meaning behind his absence has only grown more powerful with each passing hour. For the FIA, this moment represents a potential inflection point. If it's discovered that internal mismanagement, political pressure, or opaque decision-making played a role in Hamilton's non-participation, the backlash could be seismic. Trust in the governing body is already frayed after recent controversies over inconsistent stewarding and unclear technical directives. A scandal involving one of the sport's most iconic figures could threaten not only reputations but also the structural credibility of Formula One itself. And in an age where public opinion is shaped in real time through social media, the FIA cannot afford a misstep. As the engines roar to life in Barcelona, the absence of car number 44 on the grid will cast a long haunting shadow over the proceedings. Commentators will be forced to speculate. Fans will demand answers. The cameras will cut frequently to the empty garage space, and the world will keep asking, where is Lewis Hamilton, and why is he not here? No matter what the final explanation turns out to be, whether it involves science, politics, personal conviction, or an unseen threat, this moment is already being etched into the sport's collective memory. It will be talked about for years to come. It will spawn documentaries, investigations, and endless debates. What began as a routine Grand Prix weekend has metamorphosed into a deeply emotional, highly complex saga with consequences far beyond the track. And through it all, one thing remains crystal clear: Lewis Hamilton, in choosing absence over compliance, has signaled that his fight is not just for victory on the racetrack, but for something greater, something deeper. He may not be on the grid this Sunday, but his presence, his message, his silence, his defiance, will be impossible to ignore.